Hey everyone, it's Saoirse, and today I want to talk to you about something that I don't typically read and definitely want to read more of, which is a short story collection, and this one is by Haruki Murakami. It's called Blind Willow Sleeping Woman, and I had heard about it for a while, but as I said, just didn't really read a lot of short story collections, and that's something that's been seriously lacking in my life, and I don't know why. I think the same reason why I prefer, or I maybe used to prefer to write novels as opposed to short stories, is that I feel like you can get, you can get so much more character development and story out of something longer, but having just finished my master's in creative writing, we did a lot of short story writing, and that was kind of the first time that I did that, and so now I'm really, really interested in the art of it, and so while I was reading this, there are 24 stories in here. I was taking notes on what Murakami was doing to make something that was very short so impactful, because all of these stories almost all of them are under 20 pages. There's a couple that are slightly longer, but they're all pretty short, and they all pack a serious punch, so let's get into it. This was published in 2006. But a lot of the stories were published in other places previously. And I'm always interested in, who can get a short story collection published? Because I tend to think if you're not a well-known author, nobody's going to want to publish your collection of short stories. Like, who's going to want to read that? And that's such flawed thinking because short stories are so powerful. But that being said, I think it is easier for people who have a big name to get a whole collection out there rather than just one story in an anthology or in a magazine or something. So let me just read you something that Murakami said about short stories. He said, "Since my debut as a fiction writer in 1979, I've fairly consistently alternated between writing novels and short stories. My pattern's been this. Once I finish a novel, I find I want to write some short stories. Once a group of stories is done, then I feel like focusing on a novel. I never write any short stories while I'm writing a novel, and never write a novel while I'm working on short stories. The two types of writing may very well engage different parts of the brain, and it takes some time to get off one track and switch to the other." That really resonates with me, because I try to write both, and also long creative nonfiction. It is a very, very different thought process, because with a short story you want to get in, punch your reader in the face, and get out. That's how I think of it. Whereas with long fiction or long creative nonfiction, you want to set it up, you want to have things progress, have little incidents happen throughout, and then punch them in the face toward the end, and then have a little bit of aftermath. Now, I prefer to write short stories where it's just devastating throughout, and then the punch in the face happens right at the end, and then there's no resolution. There's no aftermath. This is how we recovered from that punch in the face. And not everybody likes that, but that tends to be my style. Not always, but usually. Okay, so, oh man, I forgot to grab my notes for this. Bear with me, I'm just gonna grab my notebook. And I can't edit videos, sorry. I'm back. Wasn't it weird when that YouTuber just left the camera for a minute and then didn't edit that part out? It was really weird. So, as I said, I was taking notes throughout my handy-dandy notebook. And what I wrote down was the container for the story. So a container is especially with a short story, it's where this story is happening, what contains it, because it's not happening usually across a long time span. It could be, but it's easier to write a short story with a container. So for instance, one of them, the first story, the container is a trip to a hospital with a cousin, and that's it. The story happens within that container. And then I would write the point of view, and most of them were first-person past. Very interesting. And most of them were first-person past with a male perspective. And then I would write methods. So things like current surroundings bringing up memories, a story within a story, interactions with others showing the character's personality by contrast, and then I would say what was effective about these stories, because a lot of it was very effective, and often it was a sense of discomfort, sense of the uncanny, unease, sense of dread. His stories definitely go together. Like, they're not linked as some of his other short story collections are, which I haven't read, but he talked about it. They have like a common theme. These don't, but they're all very much Murakami. Like, you recognize his style right away. Some other effective things. Sense of time moving, instilling worry in the reader, making us question the trustworthiness of the storyteller, backstory of characters, sense of loneliness. I guess that could be a method too. I don't know. Method and effective, I kind of went back and forth on those. It's fascinating because this really was like a study for me. This was like being in class, because he's so good at his craft that you would be crazy not to study it. Okay. Blah, 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 blah. So he has a lot of strange concepts in here, and he's known for magical realism, but there wasn't a whole lot of that. There were a few stories that were for sure like, wow, that's magical realism. Which, if you watch my videos, you might know I don't like that style. But for some reason, when he does it, I'm like, cool. That bird is talking right now. That monkey's talking. Like, I'm here with you. I understand what you're doing. And it works when he does it. How does he do it? Okay. Let us read a few things. So I like how he makes us feel uneasy about normal things that are happening. Like, when I'm reading every single one of these stories, they call him humorous, and I guess he is, but I just feel like deeply uncomfortable and enthralled while I'm reading his stories, and I love that. He says, I felt like I'd seen this scene many years before. A broad swatch of lawn, twin girls slurping up orange juice, long-tailed birds flying off who knows where, netless tennis courts, the sea beyond. But it was an illusion. It was vivid enough, an intense sense of the real, but an illusion nonetheless. I'd never been to this hospital in my life. So he does this a lot, where he'll tell you something that he'll just describe something that is normal, or like it's the surroundings, but you feel like something's wrong here, something is going to happen, and it's not going to be good, or it's going to be weird. It's definitely going to be weird. Like, he even says in his intro, everything I write is more or less a strange tale. Very true. So one thing he does in his stories is he often uses a conversation between two people where one person tells the other person a story. Like, the story within a story is done quite a bit in here, which is interesting. It's not really something that I've ever tried to do, but it gives you so many ideas for techniques on how you can structure a short story. Oh yeah, and for example, with these stories within a story where the person's telling the other person something that happened to them, there's often like a little lesson, a little moral, or something that we can learn about life from this story. And on one of them, oh, I should have said that first quote was from Blind Willow, Sleeping Woman, which is the first story in the book that is titled the same. And this is from Birthday Girl. No matter what they wish for, no matter how far they go, people can never be anything but themselves. That's all. So that's one of those, like, somebody telling somebody something, and then that's their little lesson. This guy likes to idle his motorcycle outside my house for like 45 minutes every day. Just stop it. Okay. This is from New York mining disaster. And this is a theme that comes up a lot. Unlike my first friend who'd killed himself, these friends never had the time to realize that they were dying. For them, it was like climbing up a staircase they'd climbed a million times before, and suddenly finding a step missing. I just really like that description of what it is to like be going towards death. But anyway, the theme of friends dying is very, very common in Murakami. If you've read any of his books, you'll probably find that. That's a big thing in Norwegian Wood. Was it in Sakura Tazaki? I read that so long ago, and I as soon as I read a book, pretty much it's gone. I can't remember anything. That's why I have to do these videos pretty quick after I finish. I don't know if there's something wrong with my brain or if that's normal. So he often mixes, he mixes in some memoir pieces with his fiction, which I really love. Like, it doesn't say on here stories that are fiction or stories that are nonfiction, but he puts in a couple of pieces that are nonfiction. But it doesn't feel out of place, really. Like, it doesn't feel like, oh, we've suddenly switched to a totally different book, what are you doing here? So he says, when you listen to somebody's story and then try to reproduce it in writing, the tone is the main thing. Get the tone right and you have a true story on your hands. Maybe some of the facts aren't quite correct, but that doesn't matter. It actually might elevate the truth factor of the story. Turn this around and you could say there's stories that are factually accurate, yet aren't true at all. Those are the kind of stories you can count on to be boring, and even in some instances, dangerous. You can smell those a mile away. So I like how he comes in as a narrator at the beginning of a couple of these stories, and he's like, hey, what's up? It's me, Haruki Murakami, and I'm going to tell you what's going on here. I'm going to interject myself as the I in this story, but this is going to be me relaying a story that someone told to me. And he's like qualifying why it's true, because he's gotten the tone right. I just like that. It's clever. Okay, moving right along. I guess I just liked this. Yeah. He was silent for 30 seconds, maybe a minute. I uncrossed my legs under the table and wondered if this was the right moment to leave. It was as if my whole life revolved around trying to judge the right point in a conversation to say goodbye. But I missed my chance. Just as I was going to tell him I had to go, he spoke up. I love how he puts in these observations about what it is to be human and interacting with other humans. He has so many interactions. There's not a lot in his stories that's very, that's like a person isolated, just kind of freaking out on their own, which is like a lot of what I write, because that's my life. But he doesn't just do that. He has a lot of conversations between people, a ton of that. He's really good with dialogue. And so there's these things like this, like, how do we know when it's the right moment to leave a conversation? It's this awkward sort of thing that we all go through, but maybe don't talk about so much. It's just very real. Like, his stories, even though they are sometimes fantastical and totally wild, they feel very down to earth. You kind of feel like he understands everything that's in your head. It's a very weird feeling. So he, as I said, talks a lot about death and mortality. I liked this part. This, oh man, am I forgetting to tell you what things are from? I'm absolutely forgetting. Oh well, we skipped a couple. This is from A Poor Aunt Story. Time, of course, topples everyone in its path equally, the way that driver beat his old horse until it died on the road, but the thrashing we receive is one of frightful gentleness. Few of us even realize that we are being beaten. So this is kind of exactly the same thing that he's describing, like going towards death without really knowing it, but he's used a different analogy for it, and it works great. And then on that theme of mortality, there's another one I wanted to read you. And this is from The Iceman. With each passing moment, I'm becoming part of the past. There is no future for me, just the past steadily accumulating. Everybody is watching this happening to me. They're watching the past, watching as I slip further and further away. So there's a lot about the past as well in these stories. The past kind of affecting us to the point where the future and the present are impossible or unbearable, because there is so much unresolved in our past. Can relate. And then, oh yeah, this is from The Year of Spaghetti, and I just like the strange comparisons that he makes, and I know I've talked about this a million times, but I'm very freaked out about, like, not knowing what a translated book felt like originally in its original language, the way it was intended. Because I always feel bad when people, like, say somebody has to read Lord of the Rings and they can't, well, they want to read it and they can't read it in English because that's not their language. And I'm like, oh, but you're not getting exactly, like, Tolkien's words and whatever. So I feel that way when I read Murakami. I'm like, but I want to know exactly what he meant, exactly what he said, and I know that some things have to be lost in translation because there's no direct translation for many, many things in different languages. His translators are brilliant, and I'll just never know unless I learn Japanese. But anyway, that frustrates me. Okay, so on the topic of weird comparisons. Spring, summer, and fall I cooked away, as if cooking spaghetti were an act of revenge. Like a lonely, jilted girl throwing old love letters into the fireplace, I tossed one handful of spaghetti after another into the pot. That was one of those moments where I was like, ooh, I wish I wrote that. That was so cool. I like when a writer can just surprise me. Like, you think you know what to expect a lot of the time, and I get so bored so easily because I've read so much, so I feel like I've kind of seen it all. So I love when there's something I haven't seen. Oh, this is kind of sad. I made hardly any friends at school or at the dorm. I was always reading, so people thought I wanted to be a writer, but I didn't. I didn't want to be anything. That's from Firefly, which is actually in Norwegian Wood. I don't know which one came first, I can't remember, but it's part of Norwegian Wood. But yeah, that made me sad. You do something a lot and then people think, like, that's you, that's what makes you who you are, and maybe truthfully you don't want to be anything, you don't know what you want. I don't know, I feel this way a lot, where people are like, oh, well, that must be your thing, like, you're the book girl, you're the hiking girl, you're the Disney girl, or you're the one who travels, and it's like, I don't feel like I'm anything, and I've never really found my place anywhere. I don't feel like I belong anywhere. It's really isolating and scary, and lately has been very bad. I don't know. I'm not good at, like, sitting still for very long in one place, but then the side effect is I really don't feel like I am in a place where I know how to exist. Anyway, a little bit off topic, but he makes me think about all these things. This is from Chance Traveler, which is one of the non-fiction ones. The other one was A Folklore for My Generation, A Prehistory of Late-Stage Capitalism, which was really cool. That was him telling somebody else's story as well. Oh yeah, okay. If we were going to meet, I wanted it to be under happier circumstances, where I could be more optimistic about things, so I decided not to get in touch with you. Right when I'd made up my mind, though, you called me. So I really, I don't know, this one made me sad too, because, like, so often people lose touch with each other, or hold a grudge, or, like, think things were bad between us at one point, and so they're gonna be bad always, and so I shouldn't even bother reaching out to you. And so I feel like there are a lot of connections that we miss in life because of that. I'm sorry, you can't see this candle and it's bothering me. It is here. I can never tell, like, what is showing. That's gonna light my Brontes on fire. Anyway, so let's move along to, this is from The Kidney-Shaped Stone That Moves Every Day. And so after he had been with a new woman for some months, if he should begin to notice something about her character or behavior, however trivial, that displeased him or touched a nerve, somewhere in a recess of his heart he would feel a twinge of relief. So this is a story about a guy whose father tells him, like, there's only going to be 3 women in your life who have real meaning for you. So when he's with a woman, he's just thinking, all he can think is this going to be one of those women? Or can I just chill because she doesn't mean anything? I still have, like, 1, 2, or 3 more. And I feel like a lot of people think this way, like, oh, this one's fine, but this one's probably not the one with meaning for me, so I'm just going to drop them, or I'm not going to put any stock into this relationship. It's not important. And y'all, we have no way of knowing these things. And I mean, some things you do just know kind of instinctively. But yeah, I don't know, there's a lot about like interpersonal relationships in here that makes you think. And yeah, that's all I'll say. So his stories are interesting because they often get very surreal in the middle. And like they might start off normal, get super surreal and weird, and just like you're like, what is going on here? And then they kind of drop off anticlimactically, which is so strange because I'm used to short stories punching you in the face. And like it's kind of frustrating because you want him to punch you in the face. You're like, where's the punch? Like when is my soul going to hurt so bad that I can't stand it? But what he does to you is he makes your soul hurt throughout the entire story at like this really low, frustrating level. And he won't give you the relief and the release of this is the terrible thing that happens, or this is the whole point to everything. It's just this undercurrent of like, oh, things kind of suck and are a little bit weird and everything is strange. And I love it. It's so different, it's so unique, and I really, really love it. Like, I can't say that enough. I'm excited to read all of Murakami's work, because I've only read Norwegian Wood, Colorless Sakura Tazaki, 1Q84, and The Strange Library. Oh, and What I Talk About When I Talk About Running. And he has so many more books than that, so I'm really, really stoked about it. If you have like a favorite one, let me know. I do have the Wind Up Bird Chronicle on my list in a few weeks here. So, anyway, I want to say what were my favorite stories from this collection, and I was going to do 5, but I just couldn't pick only 5, so I picked 7, and it is very hot. My top favorite, and maybe this is weird because it was like 5 pages, really short, maybe some people it wouldn't resonate with them, but my favorite was The Year of Spaghetti. I found it so devastating. Like, it had this visceral feeling of loneliness and isolation, like self-imposed isolation, that really got to me. And then I don't think these are in any particular order, but the other favorites are Airplane, which is about a young man who is sleeping with an older woman. She's having an affair with him. It's very sad. Hunting Knife, which I felt like it was, like the narrator was Murakami, but I could be wrong about that. It just felt like he was talking about he and his wife on vacation, and like the people that they see at their resort. It was just really like gripping for some reason. And then Blind Willow, Sleeping Woman, the first story about the man going to the hospital with his cousin who has a problem with his hearing. And The Iceman, this one was a lot more magical realism, because there is a character who's an Iceman, and Murakami says in the intro that it was based on a dream that his wife had. And then Chance Traveler, which is one of the nonfiction ones, where he tells us a story that his friend told to him, and it's about a lot of coincidences happening in life. It's very cool. And then A Folklore for My Generation, which is the other nonfiction one, and that's another one where he's telling somebody's story, and he's telling it in a way that like we can relate to it, and he says something like it happened to all of us, like maybe not the specific thing, but this feeling, this kind of just general feeling has happened to all of us. And yeah, overall, highly recommend. Love this book. I read it pretty fast, like I couldn't put it down. It was really, I thought I'd have trouble like finishing one story and then diving immediately into the next one as if it were a chapter, but I didn't. I was like, bring it on, it's all amazing. Yeah, so tell me your favorite Murakami books, please, and happy reading, everyone. Thanks for watching.